All right, so apparently the demo demons struck when we tried to live stream all of this. And so I'm going to try and do the whole thing in one video, one take. Obviously, I'm going to make some mistakes, but I'm just going to leave them in. So it'll just be like a live video, except that we won't be able to chat and everything. Anyway, what I wanted to show you was my workflow for creating text labels for small-scale general reference maps. I've done quite a few of them over the past couple of years, and I've gotten to the point where I'm pretty confident with my workflow, and I'm going to share that with you now. So this is the kind of map that I want to be producing. And zooming in, you can see it's quite dense in terms of information. There's a lot of, especially cities in this particular map. Labeling something like this can take an awful lot of time, but hopefully with the right tools and right data, you can speed that up. So what I'm using is the combination of Adobe Illustrator with Avenza MAPbulisher and the Natural Earth dataset. And I've prepared a couple of presets for this project. So let's move to the first one. So I've just imported some data, the Natural Earth dataset, which I really like for all kinds of small-scale mapping. And I'm just using the countries, the oceans, rivers, and cities, and country boundaries. And I think that's about it. Now, one of the things I really like about this dataset is the fact that it comes with the concept of scale rank attributes. So if I select a city and check out its attributes, and I've just dumbed it down to just the attributes that we need for this particular sample. There's a lot more. So we can see here a scale rank value, and the higher this number is, the less important the city is for the map. It's not purely based on population, but rather it's a combination of relative importance and location and a little bit of population and all that. So, for example, the city of The Hague in the Netherlands, it's not a terribly big city, but it's the seat of the government, so it's kind of important. It's got a scale rank value of 4. London is, of course, a mega important city, scale rank of 0. Amsterdam will have a scale rank of 1. Rotterdam, which is actually a bigger city than The Hague, but it's got a lower scale rank, a lower importance, because it's too crowded in that part of the map. Now, looking at those population numbers, and for example, going to Iceland. Let's come on, zoom out. So going to Iceland, and some of those little towns here, for example, this one, I'm not going to attempt to pronounce that. It's got just a handful of people living there, but for the map, this is more important because there's nothing else out there anyway. So you might as well map this. So that's one of the reasons why I really like the Natural Earth dataset. It has those relative importance values. Anyway, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use just stock MAPbulisher, essentially. MAPbulisher comes with some labeling tools. There is an extra cost plugin for MAPbulisher, which can do label placement and avoid labeling conflicts. But I'm not using it for these kinds of maps because it doesn't quite do it the way I want it to do. And one of the things I really like to do is I like to curve my labels for larger objects, so bigger countries, for example. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to first of all determine the size of my labels. And for country labels, I'm just going to switch off the cities layer and start off with a new layer for countries. And drag that to the top. And just place the label to get a good feel for how big it has to be. No, I'm not going to use Myriad. I'm instead going to use a free font, PT Sans, and bold. And I think 12 points would be good. And I think it would look better if it's going to be in all caps. There you go. So this is going to be my base text size for the country labels, and I'm going to create a character style for that. And next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Map Tagger tool, which is an interactive text placement tool. First thing I have to do is I have to put that layer that I've just created for the country labels in the MAPbulisher map view so I can actually work with it. So we'll drag that one in there and say it's going to be a text layer. All right. And now if I go into the Map Tagger settings, I can say that for the countries, I want to use the attribute admin, which has the country name, on the target layer country labels, using the style country labels. And I'm going to go with low accuracy. Okay, and I just realized I forgot to set one important thing. Let's see, that's in the character style options. I want to make sure that it's set to uppercase. So any country I click now, it'll place, or it should place, the name. Of course, I have to make sure that the layer is unlocked. There we go. Now it's all doing that with that default size, but they're all editable Illustrator objects at the moment. So for example, France, I can say, I want that, let's say 16 points. And I want to change tracking a bit. And of course, drag it around to where I want it to be. So for curving labels, what I do is I cut, so Control X, this object, and I place the curve where I want to put it along, and then grab my text tool and paste that text back on the curve, and then of course again change font size and spacing. So working through a whole map like that eventually ends up with something that looks like this. So I usually start with the country names. And then next step is, in a similar fashion, start adding names for the seas, oceans, all the big water features. And I'm not going to bore you with the nitty-gritty of that, but it ends up looking something like that. Usually I end up typing most of those by hand. There is actually data within the Natural Earth dataset that helps you. It's got, I believe they're called marine polygons with the names of the seas and all that. Now the next trick is going to label all of those cities. And let's make them appear again. Now, as I've mentioned, the cities have a scale rank value, which indicates how important that city is for the map. And I want to be able to see those scale rank values when I'm going to be labeling the cities. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer in the map view. And I'm going to call it helper labels. It's going to be a text layer. Okay. And I'm going to select all of my cities. Actually, no, let's create a text object first. So what I'm going to be doing is using that MAPbulisher technology to automatically place the scale rank value as a text right on top of the symbol. Of course, I got to make sure I know exactly how big it's going to be. So let's create a appropriately sized text. And because it's going to go right on top of the symbol, it's going to be white. There we go, that looks about right. So I'm creating a character style for that. And I can remove this one now. I'm going to select all of my cities. So hit Alt and select the layer, and then run the label features option in MAPbulisher, getting the value from scale rank on the helper labels layer, using the helper labels style, and just place it center, which means that now I can see what my scale rank values are for all of those cities. And that's where the next part of the trick comes in. We're going to create yet another layer. This one is going to be city labels. It's going to be, again, a text layer, but in this case, we're going to base the attribute schema on an existing layer. Now, what this does is for every text that I'm going to be placing with that map tagger for a city, it's going to copy all of the attributes of that city point onto the city label. And one of the things that's actually inside the attribute structure of the Natural Earth dataset is also the lat long value of the cities. And we'll be using that later on. So I've got the layer set up. Now I'm going to set up the styles. I'll need one for capital cities. And we'll make that bold, underline, and of course in black. And then another one for regular cities. That'll be not bold and a little bit smaller. Oops, gotta make sure it's selected before you can actually change it. Okay. Then go back into the map tagger. So double click to get to its settings, and we're going to set both the capital cities and the cities layer to exactly the same settings. We're going to be using the name attribute, and we're going to send it to the city labels layer, but we're going to use different styles. So capital cities and other cities. And just keep it at center, because we'll be clicking and dragging to determine where they're going to go. So Amsterdam being the capital city of the Netherlands, obviously I think that's the most important one. And I want to make sure I place that in a prominent position, which in this case means that unfortunately that particular city right there, that number 10, yep, no, they're not going to make it onto the final map. The Hague, Rotterdam. And so we'll be moving through the entire map this way. And It's not an easy process. Even this way takes me quite a bit of time. But once you get the hang of this, you can pretty much get quite a lot of work done in a relatively short amount of time. United Kingdom is always a little bit of a problem because there's a couple of big cities in the middle part of it. So what I would want to do is add another blank line in between and see if we can position them so that we're making some more space. And then go back to my map tagger and continue labeling. So going through the whole map like that, and it usually means having to shift some of the already existing labels around a little bit, eventually leads to something that looks like this. But you'll see that I've labeled a lot of cities, but there's still a lot of other ones that I haven't labeled. And I don't want to go through all of those manually and figure it out, because I'm bound to make mistakes and it'll take too much time. So here's where the neat trick comes in. I select my city labels layer, all of the objects there. I go into their map attributes, and as you can see, it's got all of the attributes of the original city point. But these are the attributes of the actual labels. So cities that I haven't labeled, they're actually not in this list. And what you can see is that there's a latitude and longitude field in here. So I'm going to be exporting this to a text file. Okay. Now I'm going to remove my two cities layers. So I'm left just with the text. I'll take out the helper labels as well, because we don't need them anymore. So we're just left with our city labels, not the actual points anymore. And I'll re-import them, but from the text file. And I've put that on desktop. Now I just need to specify which fields to use and what coordinate type it is. Okay. And specify the coordinate system, which is WGS84. All right. And make sure that it's being added to an existing map view. And there we are. There are the symbols for the cities that we've actually labeled and none of the other ones. Now, after playing around a little bit with the symbol sizes and styling them back to what they were supposed to be, you finally end up with something that looks like this. So there you have it. That's my my workflow for using Illustrator with MAPbulisher and Natural Earth data to create labels for small-scale maps. And I hope this is useful for you out there. If you have any questions, just feel free to connect with me on Twitter or email. You know where to find me. And I hope you enjoyed this.